Welcome to Foundations, a series brought to you by the faculty of Memoria College. Each video in this series introduces a great book in the Western tradition. Each of these texts is part of the core curriculum in the Memoria College Master's Degree program. If you'd like to learn more about these books, join us for live online classes, meet great faculty, and discuss these things with other like-minded students, please visit us at memoriacollege.org. Today, we're discussing one of the great works of Russian literature, if not one of the great works of literature, period, Anna Karenina. So, gentlemen, what makes Anna Karenina a great book?
Well, if I can start, so I would answer. There's a Greek sculpture that I want to throw into the mix that I always connect with the novel Anna Karenina, and it's called Mascophorus, which translates to the calf bearer. It's one of the sculptures found on the Athenian Acropolis. And it's an image of a calf bearer, a herdsman carrying a calf on his shoulders, and descriptive of this. There's a charm and a beauty to the bond there between the man and the beast, which really brings out the full sort of nobility and the full stature and goodness of the man. I think that's the drive behind the sculpture. And I bring that up with Anna Karenina because there is a moment at the very beginning of the novel, and I really consider it almost a character introduction. I think we've already met the character of Levin at this point, but this scene really defines who he is. It's when he leaves the city, and I believe it's immediately after he leaves the city, and he's returning to his farm. And when he first gets back, the first thing he hears is that his cow has calved, and he wants to go see the calf. Right, so we get an image here of a man who he cares for living things. He cares for this new animal life that's on his farm, and that gives us a firm definition of his character, and I think an appreciation of some fundamental aspect of the goodness of humanity, mankind's dominion over nature, or however you want to read that. That really sets things going, or sets the pace in the novel, and gives us a sense of what we're appreciating as we read the book. And I think that whatever we're seeing in Levin there, I think that is a great thing, which then makes the novel a great book.
Mm-hmm. I think you see this in a number of Tolstoy's books, but probably most particularly in Anna Karenina, both the heights and the depths of humanity. You can see mankind in its nobility and what we can rise to, and also the degradation and the depths to which we can fall when we involve ourselves with the passions. What would you say, Martin?
Well, I mean, in Kyle's point makes me think about this is that one of the things about Tolstoy, I think, that distinguishes him from a lot of other writers, other novelists, is his ability to embody things in people and in events, and in things. You know, you're talking about the calf, and I think it's hard. It almost makes Tolstoy unanalyzable because everything is so organic and embodied. He makes you see. Other writers tell, but Tolstoy makes you see, and that's always what I've appreciated. He's a natural born storyteller, and I get into these arguments with my friends, who are Dostoevsky advocates, and I love Dostoevsky, but I always point out, Tolstoy is the more natural writer. Yeah. He's the more organic writer. He's not discursive in any way, and so I think a writer who I think in terms of a novelist, the greater gift is making your reader see.
Yeah.
Right. And to put this on the timeline for everyone, this is published in the 1880s. It came out serially first. So one thing that students always wonder about is the length. It's the 800, 900 pages long, depending on your edition. But it came out piece by piece. And if you think of it being published on a monthly or, quarterly cycle, maybe it's a little more tolerable to have. It's like a long TV series.
We always have to give that excuse for, Dickens and all these other writers
right.
writing serially so that people understand why they're so long.
Right. And one of the techniques that's being pioneered in this time or was fashionable was the naturalistic, highly realistic, omniscient narrator. This was a technique that was pioneered by Flaubert in France, and Tolstoy is picking that up. Whereas Dostoevsky is doing something much more heavily invested in the dialogue. So instead of the omniscient narrator that's telling you all the details and getting into the heads of the characters, Dostoevsky is letting the characters speak for themselves in the dialogue, and then we have to figure out what's going on in the action. I wanted to say for what makes this a great book, that many years before Tolstoy wrote Anna Karenina, there's a famous story about, apparently he said to his wife, "I want to write a book about the fall of a woman in the highest circles of society without condemning her." And I find that a very interesting take. And it's interesting from the narrative perspective. He maintains this kind of moral neutrality throughout the book. He simply is telling you what happened and why certain characters did what they did and what they thought, what their motivations were. But it's not the narrator perspective, whatever the word, is somewhat neutral, and yet at the same time, he has this way of inducing in you, the reader. We can't help but judge the actions of the various characters, Anna and Vronsky, Stefan, you do judge them because it is moral and it is a moral tale. The morality is throughout the story.
And again, that's what Tolstoy is going to do that Dostoevsky is, less inclined to do. They just show you. He's going to show you the evil. He's not going to judge it. And I agree with that. I mean, when you're saying that, and I hadn't really thought about this before, but just his whole treatment of Anna throughout the novel, I ended reading the novel thinking that he still had some sympathy for her. Mm-hmm. And in the end, is a little ambiguous anyway. Yes. Yeah, you're sympathetic with it. You're not. There's some books where the bad character, you want bad things to happen to them. You don't want bad things to happen to Anna. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there is some sympathy on the part of the author that you do detect.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think I've said this before in another of these videos. I think the worst thing that a student can do when they're reading is to get a sense of that character is just crazy. Or that character is just evil, or because it's another version of thank God I'm not like that tax collector. It's a way of cutting yourself out of the story. And I think you're right. Yeah, Tolstoy won't let us do that. But all of that requires, I think, that Tolstoy. There's something happening before he writes the novel, where he looks at the world and he looks at human life, and he does see meaning and he sees beauty. And he's moved by it. And that I think, anybody can look at the world and find something wrong with it and then write a novel saying, like, isn't this horrible? Isn't this awful? Isn't this character bad? It takes a real appreciation of, this world is beautiful. Humanity is beautiful. Humanity is meaningful. You have to be moved by that first, I think, in order to do what Tolstoy does. And that's a worthy thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder, too, if Tolstoy's novel gives us some instruction on the best way to then convey that sense of beauty, right? That it's one thing to say, hey, look at this, it's beautiful. It's another thing to show its beauty in a sort of a self-evident, you say like natural or organic way, where the reader can't help but be moved by the beauty.
Well, doesn't he do that with Kitty?
Yeah.
I mean, you just fall in love with Kitty because she's just such a beautiful person, and he does these little things. And actually, the movie was terrible, but I have to say something about that because it brought something out, and I meant to go back and see if this is actually in the novel, but she's doing something, and she's portrayed in the novel as being sort of dark complected and very down to earth, and so in the movie there's this the cameraman. It's her hand, and she's dark complected, and her fingernails are short. They're almost working hands, but they're beautiful, and the camera just hones in on them.
Yeah,
it's just So I think he certainly does that with Kitty. He just gives you her characteristics, and you make your own judgment.
Yeah.
Now, this raises a natural question that many students have. Of course, the name on the cover of the book is Anna Karenina, right? So you're expecting this is going to be a story that primarily follows the character Anna, and that she's going to be the protagonist, and it's going to be 90% about her. And then students are surprised to find that there's sort of 5 or 6 different plot lines going on, and that a lot of other characters get the main time. And I think there's a case to be made that it's really not Anna that's the protagonist. If anybody's the protagonist, it would be Levin.
Yeah.
What's the story really about if it's not about Anna?
Well, I always say 2 things to describe the novel. It's a story about Levin going to heaven and Kitty and Anna going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. I've tried to think: is it more about one than the other? And it's about both, about equally, I think.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps this is a little too glib, but I was just going to say that I mean, isn't Tolstoy's whole system, like his whole view, right? His whole perspective on the world it's exactly the main characters, that the central characters are the ones whose names are not on the cover, right? And I think I think it's a little wink at the reader that he puts Anna's name on the cover, because that's what Anna would want. There's that scene where she's on the train and she's reading a novel and she's fantasizing about being the main character of a novel. And I think Tolstoy is sort of winking at the reader and saying, this is the way that Anna would have it. And yet, it doesn't, in the end, it's really...
not actually satisfying.
Right, yeah.
It's the opposite of satisfying.
Yes, yeah.
And another thing about this book that I don't know if you must see it somewhere, but I'm not thinking of it, this is also the portrayal of a beautiful marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I don't think it's just because I'm a guy, but I mean, if I hear that the book is about a beautiful, I'm less inclined to do that than a story about a great battle somewhere. So I don't know, but this it's Levin and Kitty's marriage, which is a good marriage. It's a true marriage, and Anna and Vronsky, which is this false. I don't even know if they get married. But it's a false marriage. It's it's again like Kitty versus Anna. The marriages are also this huge contrast in the novel.
Yep.
And I had this a friend of my son, and he said he was getting married. He said, "Mr. Graham, so and so and I would like to have you counsel us in marriage." He said, "Would you do that for me?" I said, "No." and I said, that's not something. I have friends who put on conferences, marriage conferences, but I said, I will do this. And I said, I want you to read a book. And then after you and so have read it, we'll meet and we'll talk about it. And he said, oh, what book is that? I said, Anna Karenina. And
a real self-help
book.
He
said, he said, oh, sure. He didn't know. And so he's living with my son. And so he's going around looking for the book, and he's looking for in the section with all these little books. And he says, oh, so-and-so, you're not looking in the right place. Here's the book. And it's this big, thick thing. So he never reads it. And so I threatened him afterwards that, if you didn't read this book, then in that part of the service where they say, if anyone has any, I'm going to raise my hand. But that's if I were doing something like that, I would we would study this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Why is this marriage so great?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the best thing. It's mutual self-sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah.
Which it makes a larger point about the nature of literature, that you'd be a lot better off reading 7 good novels about life and about real circumstances than you would reading 700 self-help books. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and it's immediate too in Anna Karenina. I mean, because isn't it? If I remember, I mean, the opening scene is that breakdown of Dolly and Stepan's marriage, Oblonsky. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's like from the beginning, it's focusing on marriage and the complications of marriage and the difficulty of marriage.
The very first lines about marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Now, before we run out of time, we always get the question from students who have never read the book before, and they're coming, what translation? Ooh. Does it even matter?
I am unequivocal about this. Louise and Aylmer Maude, that translation. Okay. I do not. What's the? I'm blanking on the other one.
Everybody always reads the Constant Garnett.
I do not, and I forget the name of the Russian literary critic, and it's escaping me right now. He is condemnatory about the other translator, but I think the Maude translation is just very straightforward. And now I haven't read the Pavir that's come out. That came out more recently than when I was teaching it. So
yeah. I'll defer. I'll take your word for it. Yeah.
All right. Now, we've got students who have never read this. They're going to go read it for the first time. What's an assignment we can give them? Start with Kyle.
Juxtaposition. So the more I read, the more I teach, the more convinced I become that juxtaposition, which is the author just laying one thing next to another. It's a very organic way of storytelling. Just put 2 things next to each other. And because they're next to each other, we automatically compare and contrast them. And some meaning comes out of that. I'm becoming more and more convinced that's the basic kind of building block of the novel itself. Like the novel as a literary form. So I would compare it to, whatever the arch is to Gothic architecture. That, it's there's a lot more to it, but that's the fundamental, that's the core. I think juxtaposition is to the novel, and that would make Anna Karenina a masterpiece of that literary form. So I think just go and look for what the author puts next to other things in the novel, and just keep a running track. Either write it down or in your mind of which scenes follow which scenes, with that question of why is this scene following that scene, and I think a lot of good will come from that.
Perfect. My assignment is to specifically follow the thread of Levin's struggle with his faith throughout the novel. He goes through several ups and downs as the novel unfolds, wrestles with questions about the nature of life, nature of God, problem of evil. And the specific question I want students to ask is, what does this have to do with the other plot elements? It seems like it's a very important theme to Tolstoy. It's obviously very important to Tolstoy's own life. If you go and read anything about his biography, he was struggling with many of these same questions. And at first glance, a student might think, okay, he's written this love story, or several love stories really, and then he's got these real life faith theological questions in the background, and he just kind of finds a way to insert those and put them in. And this is just sort of ad hoc. But I don't think that that's what's going on. I think it is very intentional and has everything to do with the structure of the novel, the structure of the plot, why the events happen to the characters. So to reflect on that and maybe write a little mini essay answering that question. What does the faith struggle have to do with the love stories?
Yeah.
Well, yours are so grandiose. Mine is more particular and a little more exotic. There, because I like to tell my students sometimes, just take this one little scene and tell me something about this. Okay, that scene where Anna is sick. I think she's at her house. I think she's shacking up with Vronsky. She's at her house. She gets sick, and at one point there are two voices coming out of her. Nobody has said this, but I want to know. Analyze that scene and tell me: is this a possession scene? Because I think it is, and I have people who disagree with me, but I think it is.
That would be a great student essay. I would love to read.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us today on this episode of Foundations. If you'd like to dive deeper into the book and discuss this at greater length, again, meet other like-minded people. We've got a great little clan of growing students that are interested in literature, interested in philosophy, interested in the great books. Please come join us. Sign up for a class at memoriacollege.org. I'd love to see you there.